My beloved Madridistas everywhere in the world, welcome back to the channel. Listen, it's quite late here in Madrid, but I wanted to give you my thoughts on the Atleti de Bilbao match. For those of you that are new to the channel, basically, I go to the Bernabeu and watch these matches, with my 81-year-old uncle, and, we watch it in the stadium, then we come home, watch the game again, and we kind of discuss it and put together our thoughts. So I want to share my thoughts on the game in general. I'll give you some sort of broad takeaways, and then we'll do player ratings and get a little bit more specific. But anyway, good result, not a great match, but let me give you my thoughts. And again, thanks for tuning in, for watching. So let me tell you what I thought about this. All right, let's get started. All right, welcome back, everybody. So let's talk about the Bilbao match. The first thing I'd mention is it was really, really weird to see Real Madrid wearing blue at home. I can't remember the last time I saw that. It was a little bit disconcerting, but anyway, so let's get on to the match. I think this kind of match I would describe as sort of 60-30. I think the first 60 minutes, we weren't great. I think in the last 30 minutes, we got a bit better. One observation that I will share with you guys, when Real Madrid isn't playing particularly well, in the stadium, it always feels a lot worse than when you kind of, watch it on TV later. I think it has to do with the tension of the crowd. And, when you're there, you sort of live every single touch. And when things aren't really going your way, everything feels so much more accentuated. But then you watch it on TV and you think, okay, maybe we were being a little bit too harsh. But generally speaking, what I'll say, it was about, the first 60 minutes, I don't think were particularly good. I think then last 30, obviously, we got better. But the first kind of immediate takeaways in my mind, so in the first 12, 15 minutes, one of the first takeaways was Brahim needs to play up front on the right. This is, as a winger, this is his best position. And he made that very clear today. And every time he plays that position, we're reminded that that's where he needs to be, not in the midfield cluttered with players, but somewhere where he can utilize his technique and his speed. That became quite clear in the first 15 minutes. Another thing that was very obvious is that Rodrigo, his favorite position is on the left wing. And he's scored the first goal was incredible, but he scored a couple of these before this season, and some of his best performances are when he starts on the left. And it's kind of an ironic situation because Vini tends to like to play on the left, and Mbappe's coming, and he kind of they can swap between the middle, but they tend to like to play on the left. So it's ironic that we're going to have three players whose best position is on the left wing. But that was one of the kind of quickest takeaways. Now, in terms of the formation, it really wasn't that surprising. It was a sort of 4-4-2 with a diamond in the middle, Kroos just in front of the defense, Bellingham further forward, and then Fede and Jude. Jude would drift quite a bit to the left. Fede would sort of drift to the right. But the formation was fairly unsurprising. There were a couple of options that Ancelotti could have played, but I don't think anybody was particularly surprised by the formation. Now, the first goal was really just an act of brilliance by Rodrigo, and he scored these before, but I don't think it was really telling of the match because the goal was so spectacular that I think you kind of forget that we weren't playing particularly well. And I think that the play after the goal, our play really, I think, sort of kind of fell apart. We were, Atleti de Bilbao started to press us very, very high. We had a very, very difficult time getting the ball out of the back, which is something that is unusual for Real Madrid. We tend to be very good on the ball, even our defenders. So to see us sort of struggle to just get the ball out of the back was a bit disconcerting, and the Bernabeu was getting, pretty impatient. But we were losing a lot of balls. We were making just very poor passes. We were losing it quickly. We were having a very hard time recovering it. And I just had the impression during the first 60 minutes that we were mentally slow and physically slow. So it felt like, physically we were always a millisecond too late to every 50-50 ball. But even mentally, I felt like we were slow to think, slow to pass, we felt we didn't have that kind of alert quickness with the ball that you would expect. So we just seemed off. We seemed we were kind of unsynchronized. And that lasted, I think, through to the sort of, after, through the first 15 minutes of the second half. Now, other kind of broader observations I would make is, the one thing that I really remarked on is Jude's work ethic. I mean, he seemed to be the player that worked the hardest. He covered the most territory. He ran the hardest. It's, I don't have the stats of how many kilometers each player ran, but I mean, Jude made an enormous effort. I think in that really crappy period, which I think was most of the match, the 60 minutes I'm talking about, the two players that I thought stood out were Rudiger and Tchouaméni. I think that they both had very, very solid games in an otherwise, pretty lukewarm performance for the team as a whole. But I mean, if you noticed, in terms of what I'm talking about, in terms of like mental speed, etc., even the throw-ins, if you watch that game again, even just a normal throw-in, I've never seen us take so long to just put a ball in play, because nobody was moving off the ball. There was a lot of standing around. Our pressing was more positional than bite. I mean, we would run into position, but then we really didn't have that last meter where you're aggressive and try to steal the ball back. So just the whole team, felt a bit imprecise, a bit stale, a little bit slow, a little bit confused. It just, I think we defended pretty well because Bilbao didn't really generate many chances, and most of that I attribute to Rudiger. But I just don't think we were very sharp. I mean, we looked sloppy. The Bernabeu was getting impatient. They didn't whistle, but they were coming close. And I think Rodrigo's spectacular goal kind of kept people at bay for a while. But anyway, things sort of changed. Obviously, after the second goal, which was an excellent goal, and at that point, I think that the team played a little bit more freely. But I didn't think this was a great performance. We've all seen us play a lot better. But now, in terms of individual performances, I mean, I'll give you my thoughts. Okay, starting with Lunin. Now, I'm going to give Lunin an 8. And that might sound exaggerated to you because he didn't have that much work. But the times he was called upon, he was very, very good, both in the air and in terms of reflex saves. And the reason I'm giving him an 8 is also the timing of the saves, because in the 51st minute, there was a very powerful strike that, it was a reflex save, but it really kept the game. It was when Athletic de Bilbao was really attacking, and if Lunin had not made that save, the game could have gone in a very, very different direction. And then even in the air, I thought he was very confident. So Lunin's getting better, and it's really great to see, because I think it's a matter of consistency now for him. But I'm going to give him an 8, and maybe I'm being, a little bit generous. Now, Carvajal and Nacho, I'm going to kind of lump them in the same place. Okay, I think I'm going to give him, a 5/6, because I saw them do really good things and I saw them do really bad things. And, overall, I think they had a game where they worked hard, but they didn't really stand out in either direction. They both lost balls unnecessarily in a couple of occasions. Carvajal actually missed quite a clear chance in the second half. But, They didn't really do anything, I think, to deserve more than a 5 or a 6. Okay, Rudiger, I'm going to say an 8. This was, Rudiger is becoming so important in this team, and the more time passes, just the more emphatic he is. I mean, today Rudiger was phenomenal. He was phenomenal. He was anything that came into the area, aerial or otherwise, Rudiger was so commanding. I think he really stood out as the wall in the back that kept everything at bay. All right, Mendy, I'm going to give him a 5 because I thought his first half was just terrible. He lost a bunch of balls. He had a couple of really dangerously misplaced balls. It was, he was a little bit better towards the tail end of the match. But I think his first 50, 60 minutes were really, really poor. So, I'm going to say a 5. He's a wonderful defender, no doubt about it. But I don't think he had his day today, at least for most of the match. Okay, Kroos. Now, Kroos, I'm going to say 6 because, it's unusual to see Toni Kroos, give crappy balls and sort of. He had a couple of the typical balls that he kind of does with his eyes closed. He had 2 or 3 that were just really sloppy, and it just didn't feel like he had the command of the middle of the pitch that he typically has. I mean, he didn't do anything, terribly wrong, but he just didn't really seem to direct the team in the way that he typically does. And like I say, it's so unusual to see him, make mistakes. So I just don't think he had his game as an exceptional player as he is. All right, now Jude, I'm going to give Jude a 7. Now, let's put it this way: nothing that he tried worked today, but he tried so much and he ran so much. I mean, the amount of territory that this guy covers on the pitch is ridiculous. I mean, he's in the back, he's up front, he's in the left, he's in the right. He's constantly asking for the ball. He's constantly directing other players. The effort that he makes is even if nothing worked today, because he was trying to dribble through people, it wasn't working, but just the level of energy and commitment that he puts into the game is truly, truly exceptional. And then, if you notice the pass in the second goal of Rodrigo, it was beautiful. It was actually a delicious pass from Kroos through the midfield up to Jude, and then Jude carried the ball, like the stallion that he is, and delivered a beautiful pass to the left to Rodrigo. So, Jude, even though most things didn't work, I'm going to give him a 7. All right, Fede. Fede, I'm going to give Fede a 6. And he has been the most consistent player all year. And he is a blessing to this club. I mean, this is one of the great discoveries in world football. But, he just, he made mistakes that you typically don't see in Fede. He dribbled on a couple of occasions where he shouldn't have been dribbling, where he should have released the ball. A couple of tackles he was kind of late to. He just didn't have the kind of physical presence that you typically expect from Fede. So I'm going to give him a 6. Amazing player, but didn't really stand out to me today. All right, Tchouaméni. I'm going to give an 8 to Tchouaméni. Tchouaméni and Rudiger in the first half, which was deplorable in my mind. Tchouaméni was he was working really, really hard. He was sort of the only sort of cement in the midfield. He was the one that was making the tackles, stealing the balls. He was helping bring the ball out from the back. Tchouaméni was very, very active, involved in, all aspects of play, and he was by far the most present and consistent player in that first half. Along with Rudiger's defending, as I mentioned. All right, Rodrigo. I'm going to give Rodrigo a 9, and it's kind of ironic that I was criticizing Rodrigo in my previous video, suggesting that, you have to be aware of a player's form and he hasn't been finishing well. Well, listen, Rodrigo today was spectacular. Okay, both goals were absolutely spectacular. And just when I was criticizing his finishing, he produces 2 absolute gems. So, and it wasn't just the goals, because every play where we looked dangerous involved Rodrigo coming in the left. So he had a spectacular game. He vindicated himself. I think he repaid Ancelotti for his loyalty today. So he had a wonderful game, and like I say, the goals were just absolutely spectacular. Okay, Brahim. Now, I'm caught between a 7 and an 8. I'm caught between a 7 and an 8, but I think I'm going to give him an 8 because, every time this guy plays, even if the final end play doesn't quite work, he always shows us so much skill. He had a few opportunities that he could have scored, maybe should have scored, but he created so much danger, and he always leaves us these little technical gems. I mean, there was a spin move in the first half between 3 players, and he speeds out of them, which was just, technically delicious. So, listen, Brahim, the combination of the work effort, the technique, and the danger that he created, even though he didn't finish, I'm going to give him an 8. It might be generous, but I'm going to give him an 8. 2 other things that I would comment on, towards the tail end of the game. I'm not going to give grades to the substitutes because they don't play long enough, but I will say 2 things. One, it was wonderful to see Militao, and you notice Lunin, there were only a couple of minutes left. He threw the ball out of bounds deliberately just so Militao could come into the pitch and hear the standing ovation. He's been out for almost 8 months, and it was so wonderful to see him on the pitch, and it was a really, really emotional, very emotional moment. So I know the player appreciated it because it was really heartwarming in the stadium. It was really, really, a very emotional moment. And then secondly, the only thing I'll mention is Camavinga, because this guy, I have a real weakness for him. I think he's one of the most exceptional young talents we've ever brought to the club. But, he came on and he just immediately brings in this incredible energy, and he has such mental speed. It's not just that he's very quick physically and very elastic and very strong and fast. He has an incredible technique with his feet, and he's very mentally quick. When Camavinga receives the ball, he immediately moves it. He's immediately looking to keep the play going, and I think he has a maturity and intelligence and a mental speed about his play that I love. By the way, and also a technique. There was one play that I hope you guys saw where he sort of dribbles past 5 players. It was spectacular. It ended up with an Atleti de Bilbao defender getting a yellow card because he literally got away from 5 defenders. It was anyway. I have to highlight Camavinga because in the little time he was on there, he reminded us of how important he is to this team. So listen, those are my sort of general thoughts. Like I say, it's late here, but those are my comments. I'm glad we won. I think the league is pretty much in the bag at this point. And we need to focus on bigger, more dangerous sharks in the ocean. But I thought a kind of weak performance, but again, when you have the skill that Real Madrid has, you can win games just with one moment of brilliance, one moment of genius. And that's the beauty of having, the best players in the world. So anyway, those are my thoughts. Thank you guys for being with me. It's really late here, but thanks for, joining, listening, and I really appreciate it. So I'll see you in the next video. And as always, a la Madrid.